Okay, and we're back. And this is COMP2068, and it's week 1, lesson 1, part 3. And we're going to be talking about a couple things. The first thing I want to talk about now is, hey, what are all those funky frameworks and some really cool tools that I need to make my game with, right? Primarily what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to focus on... How you doing? I do not. I'm in the middle of recording. Okay, so there's a couple of platforms that I recommend that you you take a look at for HTML5 games. One of them that we're going to be using is CrayChess, and I'm going to give you, there's a bunch of these links that I've accumulated over the time that I've been doing this kind of stuff, right? So all the game frameworks. So easeljs is the one that we're going to be focusing on, right? Or CrayChess. This is the library that I recommend that you start looking into, right? Again, there's no textbook for the course required, but there are recommended resources that I'm going to put in the outline that I'm going to share with you. And it'll be all up in GitHub within all up on Blackboard within a day or so, right? So CrayChess is one of the frameworks, and it has a bunch of different pieces. It's a suite of pieces. One of them is easeljs, then there's tween.js, sound.js, preload.js, and so on. These are all different libraries that are part of the CrayChess suite, right? It's the suite that Adobe has chosen for their Flash product. So when you convert stuff from Flash and ActionScript into HTML5, it's CrayChess that Adobe is choosing to use, right? So that's why I'm going with it, because some people have used ActionScript before. So ActionScript and CrayChess are brother-sister, and once you learn how to use ActionScript, and if you know ActionScript very well, then CrayChess will be very easy for you. So that's where easeljs and tween.js and so on. If you click on any one of these tools, if you scroll down, it talks about all the kinds of things that you can do, and this is all JavaScript and HTML5 based, right? And it talks about everything in terms of even things like documentation. The docs for each one of these things is there, right? So if I want to go into the API for my easeljs, which is the main module that we're going to be using, it's all right here. Yes?
Oh, sorry. No.
No.
I was just checking. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no. The other one that's out there that's very popular these days, there's a bunch of different ones. There's Enchant, there's Game Query. I'm not going to go into that one too much. But I would say Phaser is kind of one of the other one that's really becoming more popular these days. I'm not going to cover it, only because I can't cover more than one framework and expect you guys to be good at it, right? However, if you decide that, CrayChess isn't for you, and you find there's some really good Phaser tutorials that you want to use, and you want to hand in Phaser instead of CrayChess, all the power, right? But the challenge is that I won't be covering it, so when you ask questions, and it does a lot of stuff. It has a preloader, it does WebGL pretty good, it handles sprites and canvas, tile maps if you're going to do a tile map. It does everything that you need to do. It's just a little bit different than CrayChess, and it's not something that's fully supported by other projects. But however, they do allow TypeScript, right? So this is why I recommend this would be a second choice. So again, Phaser would be my number 2 choice if I was going to be doing this for you guys for now, and CrayChess would be my number 1 choice, which is where we're going to be focusing on because it's very close to ActionScript. Okay, those are the 2. There's many others, and each one of them, there's a really cool one. One student last semester, they wanted to do 3D stuff, right? And they wanted to do this stuff with threejs, right? Threejs allows you to do 3D game development with WebGL, right? Hey, it's totally cool. And like I said before, all the power to you guys to do it, but I won't be covering it because it's very complex. And it will take us the whole semester to talk about 3D stuff. But if you're already a 3D guru and you're doing stuff with Unity and the Unreal Engine or something like that, or if you're really good with something else, right, then maybe this is for you. You can do your stuff with an IDE like Blender, and then you could throw it out here into threejs and create your 3D game. And again, just for an example, here's an example of stuff that's been done. Here's some demos, right? And this is all with JavaScript
Oh, wow.
as an example, right? It's not done with anything else. It's purely in the browser, right? Just gonna wait till it fully loads. And you can see it takes some time to load. But the idea here is that you have a three-dimensional world, right, that you can totally do with threejs. Level of difficulty from 0 to hero, threejs, hero. Very little documentation, right? So the docs are fairly low to poor. You have to do a lot of your own tutorial, like find tutorials on your own, and challenging to use, right? So I don't recommend, if you're someone who's not a developer or who doesn't have a developer's heart, right? To do this kind of stuff would put you into the black hole that I talked about with playing chess. All right. So do this at your own risk, kind of thing, right? This would be the higher end. But on that, I did use some resources to create my games, and one of them I did use was Blender. Remember, I showed you that that kind of starting screen for Starbase 12. Well, Blender is this 3D tool, right, that allows you to manipulate stuff in 3D space, and it's available for you guys to use, not only for 3D manipulation, but for creating scenes, cutscenes, as an example. And this is what I did when I made my first opening scene. I did it in Blender. Blender is an open source tool we won't be covering, but it's something that you can learn, and there's tons and tons of tutorials out there. So if I go into some of my documentation for the game, here's Starbase 12, all my assets that I used, right? I have some meshes that I created with Blender, and here's my intro.blend. And if you notice, in a second, I'll show you what it looks like. There's that opening scene from Starbase 12 that I used, and I created it with Blender, right? So if I actually look at it, right, there's actually three-dimensional assets, and all I've done is stage the camera and the lighting in order for me to create that scene, right? Now, am I expecting you to be a three-dimensional artist here, 3D artist? Absolutely not, right? However, I'm not going to limit you to say that there aren't tools out there that can help you build your game, right? And we're going to talk about those tools as we go into the course, right? So, again, I built it like that. I'm just going to go back to that camera view for a second, right? Here's my camera view, and when I rendered it, let's go into kind of a rendering mode here. When I rendered it, it takes on that scene. This is the first, I don't know, opening scene for Starbase 12, right? Now I could have done different cutscenes. Every time you go into another level, I could have had some other thing going on. I didn't have time. I ran out of time, right? So whatever I accomplished with Starbase 12 happened, like I said, over a course of 3 weeks or so, right? Looks like a lot. Really, it's not. And when you look at it, you're like, wow, it took you 3 weeks to build that? Yeah, man. Go ahead and try it, right? It's not easy. It takes time. Start now. Start today. Start thinking about your stuff that you're going to be doing. Get inspired. Start doing your conceptualizing now. Start writing it down. Start scripting it out. Think about what you want to do, and then talk to me about it. Because if it's way out there, like if you want to make a full role-playing game, or something that's online, multiplayer, you're out of your gourd, right? It's not going to happen in 14 weeks, right? No matter how much time I spend with you. Unless, even if you don't sleep, and there's no other courses you're doing, just mine, you're not going to have a chance to finish. It just won't happen, right? But if you want to do a simple 2D arcade-style game, yes, it's totally possible, and we're going to do a couple of versions over the next course of weeks. All right, so again, some tools that I want to talk about. So I'm building my game, and I'm going to put some of these links up on Blackboard for you guys. I'll share all the links that I'm going to show you now for tools. One of them was, if you want to make kind of like a tile-based game, there's an editor that I recommend that you download it and learn how to use called Tiled, right? Which allows you to kind of make a tile-based game, whether it's a platformer or whether it's some kind of isometric 3D, three-quarter down kind of game. Tiled is what you want to learn how to use. And start now. Start figuring out how to use this thing, how to create maps and so on. There's lots of tiled resources out there, and I'll be covering a little bit of tiled, but I can't dwell on it too much because I got to move from one subject to the next. So I would look into it as soon as you can. And here, if you hear how I'm talking, I'm saying, hey, there's got to be a piece that I'm not going to hold your hand with in this course. Pieces of them I'm going to give you. We're going to talk about how to code and everything else, but there's going to be pieces of yourself that you're going to put into this for it to be successful, which means you got to go out there and do a little bit of research, some tutorials on your own, pull things together to kind of come up with some of the solution, and I will help you with it. Another thing to kind of look at is, hey, what if I want to make this three-dimensional, or sorry, a physics kind of based game? Like, for example, Box2D has a Box2D web port of the original C++ version. So if you want to make physics-based engine, yeah, it's hard to make it, but if it already exists, like for example in Box2D's case, then it's why reinvent the wheel when you don't have to, right? So real physics simulation that you can use in your game. We're going to be covering some of this as well, touch upon it and move on. But if you're going to make a platformer that has real kind of physics-like effects or whatever, Box2D Web is something that you want to look at. Places to get your stuff. OpenGameArt.org is probably one of the places where you want to, if you need materials, if you need things like graphics and so on, there's a bunch of forums of things like artwork that you can grab. That's, for example, free textures for some of your game elements and so on, that you don't have to pay for. That they're there for you. You just have to give these guys some credit. Say, hey, I used the stuff from free OpenGameArt, right? And you're not stealing anything when you do this, right? On that, when I ask you to use assets, you could get assets from wherever you like. If you want to modify assets that are out there, remember this is a learning experience. We're not going to sell anything here, throughout this class. So it's okay to grab assets on the web, right? Please, if you're going to grab something that's really, really popular, just in your code, I'd like you to annotate it and say, I took this from this particular game. The original assets came from Donkey Kong, as an example, or they came from Paramount owns these assets for Star Trek, as an example, or whatever. So OpenGameArt.org. Another one that I am going to talk about is there's a site called Litera, or kvazars.com, Litera, and we're going to use this to create our own bitmap fonts, right? So one of the challenges is you have some text, but the text, regular text is pretty ugly, and you want to use some of these bitmap fonts, in your game. Well, the great thing about Litera is not only can you create your own bitmap fonts, which we'll go into, but they can also be exported in various formats to be incorporated in your game when you're creating your text and your type, right? So bitmap fonts, free and open source, kvazars.com/Litera is where you want to go. One of the tools that I use that there's a 30-day trial on that I recommend you buy, right? If you're going to be a game person, and remember there is no textbook for this course, right? So when I talk about tools you buy, this is a tool you're probably going to need, right? I can't tell you it's required, but I can tell you I highly recommend you buy this one, right? It's available cross-platform, but one of them I recommend you get it's called Texture Packer, right? Texture Packer allows you to create sprite sheets, and you can export it to different platforms. For example, easeljs, Cocos2D, Phaser, Sparrow and Starling if you're using ActionScript, SpriteKit with Swift, and so on. It has a lot of exports, and they keep on updating it. Cocos2D, Corona. There's many, many, many different outputs that you can have with Texture Packer. And I use Texture Packer throughout the course. So if there's anything you're going to buy, you can trial it. I think it's a 30-day trial or something like that with Texture Packer. Trial it out, and if you don't like it, that's okay. You can also use Flash, and there's also if you're really good with Flash, you can use Flash to create your stuff, your sprite sheets. But I'll tell you that it's easier to use this. Unless you're really good with Flash, and if you're a Flash developer, then you don't need something like this. You can do everything in Flash, and it'll create the same kinds of XML sheets. Because remember, there's two sides of the sprite sheet. I got my sprite sheet, and I need some kind of map to tell me where all my sprites are, right? And you can do it by hand, but this one does it for you. So it saves you a lot of time. So I would highly recommend Texture Packer, that you preview and then buy it. So that's definitely another resource for you guys. I think it's like $50. It's not that expensive. Like, it's not all these tools that I'm going to give you. Like, they're like even you want to run on your laptop, as an example. You have a Mac like me, and you want to run Windows, right? Or you have a laptop, but you don't want to corrupt it. You want to have your own clean Windows install. and you want to use your development or do development in another window, that's fine. You can use, I like to use VMware Fusion, but you can also use VirtualBox to create your virtual machine and others. And I highly recommend doing that, creating almost like the safe environment that you're going to be working in that's Windows compatible, and that won't mess up your own environment, right? So that's perfectly fine as well. Now, VMware Fusion and VMware products are around $50, right? So they're not that expensive for the workstation version, right? So again, in terms of expenditure, we're talking about $50 to $100 so far of things that I recommend. Okay. So that's VMware Fusion, and we talked about Texture Packer, which is definitely one of the tools I highly recommend. Another place for tutorials, especially for a guy who does stuff on lynda.com and other places, is a site, hopefully it's still up, gotoandlearn.com. It's not coming up though.
That's the Georgian internet.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's that or if he actually took the site down. He may have taken the site down now. And that's fine. YouTube has a plethora of tutorials out there for you when it comes to doing some of this stuff as well. And I'm not going to say don't go to YouTube and look at it. I want to resize, and I want to kind of I think it is the internet right now. Looks like the internet's down. So it looks like our internet is like is kind of flaky right now.
So that site's up.
Gotoandlearn.com.
I'm not actually using other sites like that.
Hold on. I'll plug in directly with my little dongle. I will just restart my browser. What was that? I think I'm down right now myself personally, right? So I love when I have these issues because I'm wasting all of your time doing this kind of stuff.
There we go.
It's great
Or
if I want to, but I shouldn't have to. Let's just go there. Okay. I'm sure it'll come up in a second. Right now it's down. I'll go back to this in a second as well. It shows that I'm up, but I'm not getting access to anything. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Here's another one, another resource that I highly recommend. It's called, if you want to get some 2D stuff that another artist has created, Reiner's Tilesets is a place that I would definitely go. I've gone there since 2011 to grab assets.
free?
It's free. He does a lot of his stuff open source again, free game graphics and freeware stuff that he does. He creates graphics, so he does 2D graphics, like for example, of 3/4 down images, like for animals, tiles, all kinds of other stuff that he'll create that you can grab. So some really cool tutorials as well. Like for example, if you want to grab, if you go to buildings, he's got some really cool buildings you can grab. Tiles is stuff that you can grab and add into your game. What's that? All kinds of stuff that you need to kind of create your game. Because again, I'm trying to give you as many asset places that you can get stuff on the web as opposed to create it on your own, right? We just don't have time. We have 14 weeks to create your own unique arcade game, right? Another place that I would go for sounds is bfxr.net, right? bfxr.net allows you to create your interesting little sounds. They're original sounds, like for example, a pickup coin, right? Or a laser shot, right? Explosion. And you can make your own, right? So if I kind of use different decay times, right, or my sustain, right, I can create my own sounds and export them as a WAV file or create an MP3. So you can make your own original sounds, right, without you having to steal them from somebody else, right? Because I think it's important to try and create your own assets as much as possible, and it's free and open source. It's nothing that you have to steal from anywhere else, right? Okay. What was that? Go to and learn. And let's see, leave this page. Go to and learn. There's a guy who does. He does all kinds of tutorials on things like how to do sprite sheets with blitting, how to do isometric 3D if you're that kind of guy, if you want to do like a tile-based game. He talks about that. He talks about physics with Box 2D. And Lee Brimlow is the guy. He does stuff with, again, on lynda.com, and he does a lot of his own little tutorials, and he talks about how to do all this stuff. So if you want to do your own little research, gotoandlearn.com is a nice little resource site that you can go to. Again, I would credit Lee Brimlow if you're going to use any of his code or any of his stuff when you build your own stuff, your own games. Okay. Shoebox. There's another one. Actually, let me go to that other one. That's a tile splitter one. So I want to resize. I want to convert my my assets. I see a sprite sheet that I want, but it doesn't have kind of the stuff that I need. It doesn't have an XML diagram, or I want to take an existing sprite sheet and split it up into different images. How do I do that? Well, there's this image splitter that will do it. It's online. It doesn't cost anything, and basically you can convert images, you can resize images, and you can split images right here online, right? So it's called imagesplitter.net. There's another one for you. However, I recommend, as a resource, you download Shoebox. Now, there's something that's kind of a little bit better than Image Splitter. It's not an online resource. It's something that you actually is a little bit of an app that you download and install on your machine, but it allows you to do very similar things. I have it installed on my machine. And what it allows you to do, it's an error-based app. If I want to take a sprite sheet, I can drag and drop a sprite sheet on top of this thing, and what it'll do is it'll create my my XML file that I need. It'll split it up for me nicely and everything as well, right? So it does things for bitmap fonts. It does things for animation, bitmaps of different kinds. Like for example, you can extract tiles. It's a nice little resource and it's free, right? So again, Shoebox is something you want to look at, and you can get it here at render8hjs.net/shoebox. And this is another place I would go for your resources. Eventually, I came to the point where I wanted to make my own particle physics. So if you notice, some of the explosions that I had, right, were particle-based. I had like particle explosions, right? Well, there's some really good particle editors. One of them that works with JavaScript is from Purple Monkey Studios, right? It's called, I believe it's called Particle Emitter.js. And what you can do is you can actually have a live particle emitter editor here online, right? And you can take the JavaScript code that's available here and cut and paste it right into your own code. And I'll explain how to use this as we go forward with TypeScript. But it allows you to do this particle editor right here online. Now there's other ones that you can check out as well that are good for ActionScript as an example and iOS. Let me just go to that right now. Here's my particle editor. And for the Starling framework, this is one that's very popular. One by One Design created this Flash-based particle editor, right? But again, some of the same stuff you do here, you can test out a particle here and then bring it into that Purple Monkey Studios particle emitter.js and do the same kind of idea. One by one design. I'll put all these links online for you, don't worry, up on Blackboard for you within a day or so. So definitely something you want to take a look at. What about those 3D games though? What if you wanted to get things like textures and all that for your games, and you don't want to make them yourself, especially repeating backgrounds and all that kind of stuff? Well, there's a really good site here. It's called www.cgtextures.com. If you go there, there's all kinds of textures for things like buildings, concrete, decals, all kinds of resources for you to do things like with repeating textures, doors, all the stuff you want to make. If you want to make cutscenes, for your game and all that kind of stuff, this is the location where you can get some really cool free textures. To give you an idea about what it looks like, let's go into something like I'm going to go into brick. So I want to make a brick background, a brick wall. I want to go into medieval brick. I want to go into these types of bricks, right? So these are all the different types of bricks I can download. I can take one of these and I can incorporate this into my design. And it's there for you, free to download. Texture? Yeah, it's texture. kind of. But you know what it is the great thing about this is you can incorporate them. If you're going to do a 3D design, and you can incorporate these textures and wrap them around a 3D image. So if you're going to do something with 3D, this is a great place to get stuff. But sometimes what you need is some kind of textures like this because you want to create an environment for your 2D games, right? Or a cutscene, and this is a good place to get it from. And what about those meshes? You want to do some stuff with 3D, but you don't want to work hard, right? As an example, well, you can go to something called 3D Warehouse, right? It's hosted by Google, originally done by SketchUp, and you can grab some 3D models that are perfectly in existence today. You want to do a cutscene, as an example, and you want to do it in Blender. Blender won't take you long to learn. It'll take you, a week or two to pick up. And this is using SketchUp, right? And if you download a free version of SketchUp, which I won't go into, you can export these, these meshes from here into Blender and then create your own cutscene. Now you might say, holy crap, Tom, you show me all this stuff to create my cutscenes and to create my game elements. Well, yeah, because you can't play games without stuff, right? I mean, yeah, I can make a circle and draw it in CrayChess or on Canvas, but it's not going to look cool, and you won't get that same interactive feedback that you normally would get if you didn't have resources like this, right? So definitely, I'm just trying to give you some places to go to grab stuff.
The first fancy links on my, I have this, you know what Google Keep is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything is what Google Keep.
So far?
So the entire screen is just filled with all the links.
Good, excellent. So I'm going to stop there because there's more that I'm going to give you as we go forward. Like I said, there's lots of game frameworks and so on that we can talk about. But I think what I'd like you to think about is, where are you going to get your resources? How am I going to sketch out my game? How am I going to conceptualize of what this thing is going to be like? And this, I want you to start thinking about it today with the end in mind. How's my game going to look like? What kind of game do I want to create? Right? Some of you will never create this thing. You'll be thinking about today, and then as we go forward in the course, you'll realize it's challenging to do this kind of stuff, and you may do kind of an offshoot of your project number one, which is going to be a side scroller that I'm going to tell you to do. So it's going to be a required game. One of the required games you're going to build for me this semester is a side scroller. Another one is going to be a slot machine, which we're going to get into, right? So we're going to build up. We're going to go from very, very simple stuff to much more complex things, and we're going to do that over a series of weeks. We're going to build, right? But some of you may never get to a game where you're going to be able to make on your own. You may just base it off your side scroller. But again, I'm telling you now, think about what you want to do now, because it takes, at the minimum, 4 to 5 weeks to create your final project for you to get full marks. Okay. I'm just going to pause it there.